Welcome to Lantern and Lullaby. I'm so glad you've chosen to spend this quiet evening here. Before tonight's journey begins, allow yourself to become comfortable. Let the day drift behind you, and let your breathing settle into its own gentle rhythm. Tonight, rain will fall across an old stone house beneath the hills, and through the mist, a range of softly colored mountains will begin to appear. Beyond them, a hidden railway waits to carry you above the clouds, towards a peaceful palace of silver rivers, quiet gardens, and glowing windows. So, whenever you're ready, the rain is beginning to soften. The distant colors are shining through, and our story begins. Tonight begins in the hush of a rain-soaked room, high beneath the eaves of an old stone house, where the world beyond the window is little more than silver rain and darkening hills. Everything feels ordinary at first. The soft warmth of lamplight, the steady patter on the glass, and the quiet comfort of familiar walls. But far beyond the low fields and hedgerows, just where the evening cloud begins to loosen, something unusual glows through the rain. It is not lightning, and it is not sunset either, but the faint suggestion of color resting where no color ought to be, as though another world has quietly risen behind the storm. As you come nearer to the glass, the faint colors begin to separate themselves from the gray. What seemed at first like a trick of tired eyes now reveals long distant bands laid gently across the horizon, as though hills of rose stone, pale gold, cool green, and violet were hidden behind the weather. Rain runs down the pane in wavering lines, blurring and sharpening the view with every passing second. The colors do not flash or move. They simply wait, patient and quiet, as though they have always been there, expecting only that tonight, at last, you would notice them. The room gives way to a dim wooden landing, hushed and still, where the house seems to listen along with you. Rain taps gently somewhere above the roofline, and a faint draft wanders through the stairwell, carrying the smell of wet stone and cool night air. Behind you, the strange horizon remains unseen now, but no less present. It is enough simply to know that it waits outside. Every board, every shadow, and every soft corner of the old house seems to guide you onward with a kind and patient certainty, as though this path has been opened before and requires only your willingness to follow. Step by careful step, you move down into the heart of the house, where the warmth gathers more deeply and the rain sounds softer, as though wrapped in stone. The downstairs hall is plain and familiar, with worn floor tiles and old wooden walls polished by years of quiet use. Yet tonight, even these ordinary things feel touched by anticipation. Somewhere ahead, a door stands ready to open onto the rain-dark garden. Somewhere beyond that garden lie the colored hills. There is no urgency to the journey. It asks nothing hurried of you. It only invites you onward, one gentle threshold at a time. At once, The scent of wet earth and leaves rises to meet you. The garden beyond the threshold gleams with rainwater, every stone and blade of grass silvered beneath the evening sky. Hedges lean softly in the wind, and the path ahead shines darkly between flower beds and damp herbs. Beyond the garden wall, the world opens towards the fields and hills, though the mysterious colors remain half hidden by rain and gathering mist. The house behind you is still warm and still safe, but the path outside carries a quiet promise. It feels less like stepping away from home than stepping towards something long expected. The stones are slick beneath the rain, and the garden seems somehow larger in the hush of evening, each border and branch holding its breath. At the end of the path, a narrow gate waits beneath a veil of ivy and climbing stems, one you may have passed 100 times without much thought. Tonight, it feels different. Through the half-open slats, you glimpse a steeper path than you remember, descending into the darkness beyond the wall. Threaded through the sound of rain, there comes another gentler sound now, the faint movement of running water somewhere below. The path curves immediately away from the house, enclosed by dripping grass, fern, and dark hedgerow, while the sound of water grows clearer with every step. Soon, a small stream appears beside you, flowing briskly over pale stones that catch an odd softness of color, even beneath the cloudy sky. Here and there, the rock beneath the water glints with muted pink, green, or gold, as though the hidden mountains have already begun to send traces of themselves downstream. The lane is narrow and sheltered. The air is cool and rich with rain. The world behind you fades quickly into silence. The bridge is modest, worn smooth by weather and time, but in the rain it shines like polished slate. Water passes beneath it with a quiet certainty, carrying colored pebbles and leaf shadows down into the dark. As you pause above the current, the hills ahead seem to lift slightly out of the mist. For the first time, the layered colors appear not only in the far distance, but in the land itself, with bands of clay red and pale green beginning to show through the dark hillside beyond. It is enough to make you understand that this is no illusion. The road ahead is real. Here, the rain softens beneath the shelter of the slope, and the path narrows between damp stone walls streaked with long mineral stains. Moss darkens the edges, and thin trickles of water descend from above in silver threads. The colors in the rock are clearer now. Muted rust, chalk, pale blue-green and lavender gray. They are still soft and still natural, yet unmistakably different from the ordinary hills below. The sheltered bend feels like an in-between place, neither part of the village you left, nor fully within the mountain realm ahead. It is a quiet corridor of arrival, and the air seems to hold its own patient welcome. It is not grand, but it is impossibly well placed, as though the mountain itself had made room for it. A narrow platform extends beneath a deep roof of timber and stone, protecting a single waiting area from the rain. The track curves out of sight into mist on one side and towards a dark tunnel mouth on the other. Everything is empty, orderly and still. There are no voices, no footsteps, and no signs of attendance. There is only the clean smell of rain on wood and rock, and the sense that this station has been expecting precisely one traveler tonight. Somewhere beyond the tunnel, the hidden mountains wait. The platform is silent enough that the smallest sounds begin to matter. The drip from the eaves, the click of cooling rails, and the distant whisper of water somewhere below the mountain. The track ahead glistens faintly, then disappears into the tunnel where darkness rests without menace. Looking the other way, you can still see the wet hills you have climbed through, already blurred and softened by rain. The familiar world feels very far below now. Standing here beneath the sheltering roof, you have the calm sensation of waiting at the threshold of a place that cannot be reached by daylight habit or ordinary maps. At first, it is only a dim warmth moving behind rain and stone. Then, the quiet shape of a mountain rail car emerges from the tunnel with hardly any sound at all. Its windows glow softly against the blue-grey evening, and droplets gather and slide along its polished sides. It does not rush in. It arrives with the same patient calm as everything else tonight, as though speed would be out of place here. When it finally comes to rest beside the platform, the stillness deepens rather than breaks. The journey ahead seems already gentler than any road you have ever known. Inside, the carriage is softly lit and unexpectedly comfortable, lined with polished wood, muted upholstery, and wide windows silvered by rain. Everything feels carefully prepared. It is not luxurious in a loud way, but deeply restful, as though the compartment exists for the simple purpose of carrying tired minds somewhere gentler. The station outside begins to recede from your thoughts even before the car begins to move. Beyond the glass, the platform remains empty and still. Inside, there is only warmth, shelter, and the low expectation of ascent. Soon, with barely a tremor, the carriage glides forward into the mountain. The climb begins so smoothly that it feels less like travel than drifting upward on a thought. The track curves along the mountainside, lifting you above hedges, streams, and darkened fields, while mist gathers and loosens around the carriage in soft white folds. The rain continues, but more lightly now. Through the damp glass, you glimpse stretches of exposed cliff, carrying pale seams of red, green, and gold. The world below seems to soften into memory. Ahead, the mountain path becomes quieter, steeper, and more strange. The colors hidden on the horizon begin to rise around you on every side. Below the bridge, a white stream threads through rock and mist, disappearing among steep walls stained with color by the deep earth itself. The height is considerable, yet nothing about it feels precarious. The carriage moves with calm certainty, and the bridge beneath you seems as solid and patient as the mountain. Looking outward, you see the weather shifting at last. The rain is thinning. In its place, low clouds drift between the slopes, parting just enough to reveal longer and broader sweep of colored stone. The hidden country is opening not all at once, but gently, as though careful not to startle your rest. The tunnel is not dark in the ordinary way. Soft lamps within the carriage cast a quiet glow across the walls, and as you pass, the mountain reveals itself in long flowing bands of color smoothed by time. Faded terracotta, pale turquoise, chalk white, ash violet, and warm ochre. Moisture glimmers on the rock, catching the light in a subdued sheen. There is no harshness here, and no sense of confinement. Instead, the tunnel feels almost like a corridor prepared within the earth, guiding you inward through the sleeping body of the mountain itself. It is a place to pass through slowly and to wander without effort. When the carriage glides back into the open, the change is gentle but astonishing. The air beyond the window looks clearer, thinner, and somehow wider, with pale mist lying below the track like a quiet inland sea. The station here is little more than a sheltered platform set between high stone walls, yet it stands in a place of extraordinary stillness. The lower world has fallen away entirely now. Here, there are only mountain slopes, cloud, and the suggestion of greater heights and deeper valleys waiting just out of sight. As the carriage comes to rest, you feel that you have reached not an ending, but a doorway. At first, the eye scarcely knows where to rest. Ridge after ridge unfolds beyond the overlook, each one carrying its own soft bands of color, rose and cinnamon, green and cream, violet and pale gold, all deepened by cloud shadow and evening light. Streams wind like silver thread through the valleys, and terraces of stone descend into a broad, sheltered basin far below. The place is vast but tranquil, strange but welcoming. Nothing blazes or shouts. The colors lie across the mountains with natural grace, as though painted there by ages of rain, wind, and buried mineral light. Somewhere within that valley, something more waits. The road leaves the station in slow, elegant curves, bordered by low walls and small channels of running water. As you descend, the mountain colors rise closer once more, no longer distant scenery, but the very substance of the path itself. The stone beneath you shifts from pale cream to rust and green, while nearby slopes reveal fine layers and weathered folds like fabric laid by patient hands. The valley air feels softer here, protected from the wind of the pass. A faint warmth begins to gather among the stone. Ahead, beyond one final bend, a glow appears, subtle, golden, and unmistakably architectural. There, at the center of the valley, resting beside silver water and beneath encircling colored cliffs, stands the palace itself. It rises in terraces of pale stone, with long colonnades, quiet roofs, and softly glowing windows set against the deepening blue of evening. Streams descend from the mountains around it, feeding pools, channels, and gardens that shimmer faintly in the last light. Nothing about it feels harsh or impossible. It seems ancient, serene, and entirely at home within the valley that shelters it. After the rain, the climb, and the waiting, you have arrived at the threshold of a place that has been patiently expecting you all along. The palace grows steadily larger with every gentle turn of the road. What had seemed distant and almost dreamlike now begins to reveal its true scale, with terraces rising one above another and long colonnades reaching across the lower slopes. Water follows the road beside you in narrow channels, moving with a clear and unhurried sound. The surrounding cliffs rise high above the path, their mineral colors softened by the last cool light of evening. Ahead, the road descends towards a broad silver river that separates the outer valley from the palace grounds. Across the water, softly illuminated gardens wait beneath the pale stone walls. The bridge arches only slightly above the water, broad and steady beneath your path. On either side, the river moves between smooth pale banks, reflecting fragments of colored mountain and evening sky. Small streams descend from the surrounding cliffs and join the river in quiet ribbons. Ahead, the palace rises beyond low garden walls, its windows glowing softly between dark, cypress-like trees and flowering terraces. The water beneath you carries no urgency. It seems to gather the stillness of the entire valley and return it in the gentle sound of its passing. The road gives way to a broad court of pale paving, still damp from the rain that passed through the valley earlier. Low gardens unfold on either side, planted with silver grasses, dark shrubs and small flowers whose colors echo the surrounding mountains. Shallow channels carry clear water between the beds, crossing beneath the paving through narrow stone openings. The palace facade rises directly ahead now, calm and symmetrical, with wide steps leading towards a sheltered entrance. Nothing here feels ceremonial or forbidding. The forecourt seems designed not to impress arriving travelers, but to help them become quiet before entering. Tall stone columns rise beside you, supporting a roof that shelters the walkway from the cool, damp air. Between the columns, the forecourt gardens and silver river remain visible behind. Soft lamps are set deep within the walls, casting restrained pools of warmth across the pale floor. Rainwater still clings to the outer edges of the colonnade and falls occasionally in slow, heavy drops. The palace entrance waits at the far end beneath a higher arch. Each measured step beneath the columns seems to leave a little more of the long journey behind. The steps are broad enough to climb without effort, worn slightly at their centers by years beyond counting. Water glistens in the fine seams between the stones. On either side, narrow channels descend from the palace walls and feed the gardens below. The entrance above is framed by pale columns and a deep stone arch, with warm light resting quietly beyond. Looking back for a moment, You can see the road winding towards the bridge and disappearing among the colored cliffs. Then the valley falls behind you as you climb the final steps towards the threshold. The doors are formed from dark, polished wood set within the pale stone arch. Their surfaces are simple and unmarked, carrying only the grain of the timber and the soft sheen of age. Beyond them lies a quiet vestibule lit by low wall lamps and the fading blue light from outside. The cool scent of rain follows you to the threshold. For a moment, the open doorway holds both worlds at once, the colored valley behind and the waiting palace within. Then you pass beneath the arch and enter. The floor beneath you changes from weathered exterior stone to smooth pale slabs veined with soft mineral color. Dark wooden panels rise along the lower walls, balancing the height and brightness of the chamber. A shallow basin rests at the center, filled by a thin stream of water descending from the wall. Its surface remains almost perfectly still. Behind you, the open doors frame the fading valley light. Ahead, another arch leads deeper into the palace, where the sound of moving water becomes clearer. The chamber opens far wider than expected, its pale ceiling supported by rows of simple stone columns. Between the walking paths, shallow channels flow across the floor in long, straight lines. The water reflects fragments of columns, lamps, and colored stone without forming any human image. Small bridges connect one part of the hall to another, each made from a single smooth slab. The sound is gentle and continuous, filling the great space without disturbing in its stillness. At the far end, a brighter opening reveals an inner courtyard beneath the evening sky. Here, the stone has been left almost undecorated. Long, natural bands of cream, faded terracotta, sage, lavender, and pale turquoise flow through the walls from floor to ceiling. Soft, concealed light brushes across the mineral layers, revealing their depth without making them shine too brightly. The gallery curves gently rather than running straight, so its far end remains hidden. Along one side, narrow openings look back into the Hall of Quiet Waters. The palace no longer feels merely built beside the Rainbow Mountains. It feels as though the mountains themselves continue quietly through every wall. Cool evening air returns as the roof gives way to a wide square of deepening sky. The courtyard is enclosed on all sides by pale colonnades and quiet upper windows. At its center stands a long rectangular pool, dark and perfectly calm, except where a thin fall of water enters at one end. Low trees grow from raised stone beds around the edges, their leaves still holding droplets from the rain. The mountains are no longer visible here, yet their colors remain present in the courtyard stone. The open sky above makes the palace feel less enclosed, as though every interior journey will eventually return to air and water. The pool travels almost the full length of the court, drawing your gaze towards a softly illuminated doorway at the opposite end. Water laps quietly against the pale stone rim. Beneath the surface, pieces of cream, rose and greenstone create a muted pattern shaped only by their natural color. The surrounding colonnade shelters the walkway while leaving the sky open above the water. Occasional droplets fall from wet leaves and disappear into the pool with small circular ripples. The doorway ahead stands open, leading towards the quieter rooms of the palace. The room is lower and more intimate than the halls behind you. Deep upholstered seats are arranged around a shallow hearth built into the wall, where a small, steady fire gives more glow than heat. Pale stone shelves hold simple ceramic vessels, smooth mineral pieces, and folded cloth. Tall windows overlook the courtyard pool, now darkening beneath the evening sky. The room feels prepared for conversation, yet its silence seems complete rather than empty. Beyond a second doorway, a longer chamber waits, with the faint suggestion of music held within its walls. A dark, polished piano-like instrument stands near one wall, its surface closed and unadorned. Farther along, a harp-shaped instrument and several stringed instruments rest upon simple wooden stands. No music is being played, yet the room seems to carry a faint memory of vibration. The curved ceiling gathers the quiet and returns even the smallest footfall softened. Tall, narrow windows look towards the mineral cliffs beyond the palace gardens. At the far end, a broad opening leads into a calmer gallery lined with books. Dark wooden shelves rise between pale stone columns, filled with rows of closed books whose spines carry no visible titles. The ceiling is crossed by heavy timber beams, lending warmth to the cool mineral walls. Along one side, deep windows are cut directly into the mountain stone. Through them, narrow waterfalls descend across colored rock and vanish into gardens below. Small reading tables stand beneath shaded lamps, each one empty and carefully arranged. The library feels less like a store of information than a place where time itself has learned to become quiet. The alcove is enclosed on three sides by dark wooden shelves and softened by a deep cushioned seat beneath the window. Outside, water moves down the colored cliff in thin silver threads. The glass holds a faint coolness from the mountain air beyond. A small table stands nearby with an empty ceramic cup and a shaded lamp. No book has been left open, and no message waits to be read. The quiet here asks nothing from you, except to pause and listen to the waterfall beyond the glass. The shelves gradually give way to a sequence of tall, arched windows. Between them, pale stone benches provide quiet places to look across the valley. The rain has fully passed now, leaving the gardens below dark, clean, and shining. Beyond the palace terraces, the rainbow mountains deepen into muted violet and blue beneath the approaching night. Thin waterfalls remain visible as pale moving lines against the cliffs. At the end of the gallery, warm light spills from a small tea room overlooking the lower gardens. The room is arranged around broad windows that make the darkening landscape feel close. Low tables stand beside comfortable chairs upholstered in muted green and grey. A simple ceramic pot rests on a warmed stone surface, sending a faint curl of steam into the quiet room. Small bowls contain dried fruit, pale biscuits, and fragrant herbs. The light is soft and carefully restrained, preserving the cool colors outside. Beyond the windows, garden pools reflect the first dim stars without allowing the sky to dominate the view. A single long table stretches through the center of the room, set with plain ceramics, clear glasses, and folded cloth. There are no elaborate ornaments and no towering displays. The beauty of the room lies in the pale stone floor, the dark beams overhead, and the windows opening towards the valley. Small lamps run along the walls, creating pools of light rather than a single golden glow. The table remains untouched, as though the palace has prepared a quiet evening meal without expecting ceremony. A discreet doorway at the far end leads towards the working rooms beyond. The polished stone gives way to practical flooring worn smooth by long use. Copper pipes follow the walls, carrying warm water towards distant rooms. Small recessed lamps provide enough light to guide the way without disturbing the darkness. Shelves hold plain baskets, folded linen, and unmarked ceramic containers. Through an open arch ahead comes the muted sound of simmering water and the quiet crackle of a cooking fire. The palace feels different here, simpler and more purposeful, yet no less carefully maintained. The kitchen is broad, orderly, and unexpectedly calm. Long stone work tables stand beneath hanging copper pans, while several covered ovens glow softly along the far wall. Steam rises from a deep pot set over a low flame and disappears among the timber beams above. Fresh bread cools upon wooden racks beside bowls of herbs, fruit, and mountain vegetables. High windows look towards an enclosed inner garden where pale paths disappear among dark trees. A glass-paneled doorway beside the bread racks leads directly into that hidden garden. Beyond it, the quieter heart of the palace waits beneath the night. Cool night air enters the kitchen at once, carrying the sense of wet leaves, stone, and running water. Beyond the glass, a pale path curves between dark trees whose branches still hold the last droplets of rain. Low lamps glow beneath the foliage, revealing only small portions of the garden at a time. Behind you, the kitchen remains warm and orderly, its copper pans and ovens reflected faintly in the glass. Ahead, the path disappears beneath an arch of leaves. The quieter heart of the palace begins just beyond the threshold. The kitchen light fades gently behind you as the garden closes around the path. Low trees rise from beds of dark stone, their leaves shining where the lamps reach them. Small flowers remain open despite the hour, carrying muted shades of cream, dusty rose and violet. Water moves somewhere nearby, hidden at first by the hedges and shadow. The palace walls surround the garden on every side, yet the open sky above keeps the space from feeling enclosed. Each bend seems designed to reveal the garden slowly, one quiet corner at a time. The water travels within a channel no wider than a handspan, edged with pale stone worn smooth by its passing. Its surface catches fragments of leaves, lamps, and deep blue sky. Small bridges cross the channel at intervals, each formed from a single piece of mineral veined stone. The path follows the water beneath low branches and between beds of dark fern. Here, the sound that first reached you from the kitchen becomes clear and constant. The garden seems to gather around the stream as though every tree and flower has been arranged to listen. The trees here are older and broader, their dark branches trained across simple wooden supports. Small, pale fruit hangs among the leaves, shining softly with rain. The rill divides into several narrow channels that carry water around the roots. Stone seats rest beneath the trees, facing a circular pool at the center of the court. A faint fragrance of fruit and wet bark lingers in the cool air. Beyond the orchard, a covered walkway begins beneath a line of pale columns. The roof shelters the path, while leaving the orchard open beside you. Pale columns pass in a slow rhythm on one side, and the palace wall rises quietly on the other. Rainwater still gathers along the outer edge and falls in occasional heavy drops. Between the columns, you glimpse the orchard pool, the narrow water channels, and the darker garden beyond. Ahead, the walkway reaches a glass house whose windows glow softly through layers of leaves. Warmth gathers in the air as you approach. The change in temperature is immediate but gentle. Rows of small citrus trees grow from deep stone beds beneath a high glass roof. Their leaves shine dark green in the softened light, while pale fruit rests among the branches. Narrow channels carry warm water through the floor, keeping the glasshouse air mild through the night. Condensation gathers on the panes and blurs the garden outside. A tiled path continues between the trees towards another chamber filled with taller and more delicate plants. The chamber rises higher than the citrus house, supported by slender pale stone arches and dark metal ribs. Long vines climb trellises and columns, carrying white and faintly violet flowers that have opened beneath the night sky. Their petals hold tiny beads of moisture. A shallow stream moves through the center of the conservatory, beneath small stone bridges. Beyond the glass roof, clouds drift slowly above the palace. At the far end, an open doorway leads onto a garden pavilion surrounded by water. The pavilion stands upon a low island within a dark rectangular pool. Its roof is supported by pale columns, leaving every side open to the night air. Cushioned stone benches face the surrounding water and the glowing conservatory behind. Small streams enter the pool from 4 narrow channels, creating soft ripples that move towards the island. The air is cooler here, scented faintly with flowers and damp mineral stone. Beyond the pavilion, a descending terrace reveals steam rising among the lower gardens. Below, a sequence of pale pools rests among low walls, trees, and shadowed colonnades. Thin veils of steam rise from the water and drift across the paths. The mineral cliffs stand close behind this part of the palace, their muted bands visible even beneath the night. Water descends from several small openings in the rock and feeds the pools through carved stone channels. A broad stair begins at the terrace edge and follows the warm water downward. The palace seems to have grown around the springs rather than forcing them into shape. The stone beneath you holds a faint warmth gathered from the water. Beside the steps, the channel descends in a sequence of shallow falls, each one releasing a quiet breath of steam. Low garden walls shelter the route from the cooler night air. Through openings between them, you glimpse pools reflecting columns, trees, and fragments of dark sky. The stair turns once beneath an arch cut directly into the mineral cliff. Beyond it, warm light rests across the entrance to the bathing hall. The air is warm and lightly veiled with steam. Pale columns rise from the edges of several long pools, supporting a ceiling of dark timber and stone. The spring channel enters through the mineral wall and divides quietly among the pools. Muted bands of rose, sage, cream, and lavender remain visible in the unpolished rock. Soft lamps are placed low beside the water, allowing the ceiling and distant corners to remain restful and dim. A covered gallery continues beside the pools towards a quieter chamber beyond. Each pool is slightly different in shape and depth, though all are edged with smooth pale stone. Water passes from one to the next through narrow channels cut into the floor. The nearest pools reflect warm lamps, while those farther away hold only the cool colors of the mineral walls. Simple benches stand beneath the columns, with folded cloth resting upon them. The steam is lighter here, allowing the quiet architecture to stretch into the distance. At the end of the gallery, a rounded doorway opens into a chamber filled with greenery. Ferns and broad-leaved plants grow from stone beds around a shallow central pool. The warm mist settles upon every leaf and gathers in bright droplets along their edges. Above, narrow roof openings allow cool night air to drift into the chamber. The meeting of warm steam and cooler air forms slow white ribbons beneath the ceiling. Water runs through small channels between the beds before returning towards the bathing hall. Beyond the plants, a doorway of dark wood leads into a quieter stone chamber. The room is formed from smooth, pale stone, shaped into a high, round dome. A ring of fine water streams descends from the ceiling into a shallow channel around the edge. The center remains dry and open, with a simple stone bench following the curve of the wall. The falling water creates a steady sound, like gentle rain upon leaves. Cool mineral colors move faintly through the stone beneath the restrained light. A second doorway stands opposite, leading towards a warm resting room beyond. The ceiling lowers here, making the room feel sheltered after the open bathing halls. Deep cushioned benches line the walls beneath tall, narrow windows. Through the glass, steam drifts above the garden pools and disappears among dark trees. A shallow hearth gives a small, steady glow from one end of the room. Low tables hold plain ceramic cups and bowls of dried herbs. Nothing in the room asks to be used immediately. It seems made simply for sitting until warmth and quiet have settled completely. Dark wooden shelves hold neat stacks of folded cloth in pale, natural colors. Copper pipes rise from the floor and follow the walls, carrying gentle heat from the springs below. A narrow stone table stands at the center, with empty baskets arranged beneath it. The room is practical but carefully finished, with the same pale stone and muted mineral veining found throughout the palace. A faint current of warm air moves through small openings near the floor. Beyond an open arch, a stair begins to rise away from the bathing level. The steps curve gently within the mountain wall, following a narrow channel of cooling water. Small openings appear at intervals, revealing glimpses of the steaming gardens below. The air becomes cooler with each turn. Mineral bands flow through the stair walls in soft colors darkened by night. Above, the sound of leaves moving in the breeze gradually replaces the enclosed murmur of water. A final arch opens onto a garden terrace high above the spring courts. The garden occupies a broad terrace supported above the spring courts by pale arches. Trees grow from deep stone beds beside paths of dark slate and cream stone. Vines descend over the outer walls, their wet leaves stirring in the night breeze. Between the planting beds, narrow pools reflect the upper palace windows and the colored cliffs. The air is cooler here, though faint warmth still rises from the springs below. Across the terrace, a covered passage leads towards the palace's private inner wing. The palace roofs and garden courts spread quietly below, broken by pools of warm window light. Beyond them, the silver river curves through the valley and disappears between the colored mountains. The rain-washed cliffs now hold only muted traces of rose, green, and violet beneath the night. Thin waterfalls continue their descent as pale threads. Behind you, the hanging garden remains sheltered and still. Ahead, a long private colonnade begins beneath a darker roof, separated from the grander palace rooms by a simple open arch. The public halls and garden courts now feel distant behind you. This passage is narrower, with pale columns on one side and dark wooden panels on the other. Through the openings, the valley remains visible in fragments between climbing vines and stone balustrades. Small lamps rest low along the wall, guiding the path without brightening the night. At the far end stands a single open doorway made from dark, polished wood. Beyond it, a softly lit corridor turns out of sight towards the private rooms of the palace. The corridor curves gently away from the outer wall, carrying you beyond the last open view of the valley. Dark wooden panels rise between sections of pale mineral stone, their polished surfaces holding only the soft glow of low lamps. The ceiling is lower here than in the grand halls, crossed by narrow beams that make the passage feel sheltered and close. Small alcoves appear at intervals, each containing a plain ceramic vessel, a folded cloth, or a single branch of leaves. The public rooms of the palace already seem very distant. Even the sound of water has softened to a faint murmur behind the walls. Ahead, the corridor widens around a quiet antechamber, where several doorways wait beneath the warm light. The space is octagonal, with a doorway set into nearly every wall. A shallow ceiling dome gathers the warm lamplight and softens it across the pale stone. At the center stands a low circular table holding a single bowl of clear water. The surface remains so still that it seems to have been placed there to preserve the silence. Dark wooden benches follow several sides of the room, softened with muted cushions. One doorway leads back towards the corridor, while another opens onto a private sitting room overlooking the sleeping valley. A third remains closed, and a narrow passage beyond it appears to rise deeper into the palace. For now, the open sitting room draws you towards its tall moonlit windows. The room is arranged around 3 tall windows cut deeply into the outer wall. Beyond them, the silver river lies beneath the moon like a quiet ribbon of glass. Low cushioned seats face the view, accompanied by small tables of dark wood and pale stone. A shallow hearth glows at one side, though the room remains mostly cool and blue with night. Shelves hold simple vessels, smooth pieces of mineral stone, and several closed books with unmarked spines. The windows are slightly open, allowing cool mountain air to move through the room. From somewhere below comes the distant sound of waterfalls descending through the dark. A second doorway stands open beside the hearth, leading into a smaller room, prepared for a quiet evening meal. A round table stands beneath a low timber ceiling, prepared with only one simple place setting. There is no ceremony here, and no sense of a formal dining hall. A plain ceramic bowl, clear glass, folded cloth, and small plate rest upon the dark wood. Nearby, a warmed stone shelf holds bread, pale fruit, and a covered dish releasing the faintest thread of steam. A narrow window looks into an inner courtyard where water moves beneath dark leaves. The room feels carefully prepared, yet entirely unhurried. Beyond the table, a paneled doorway stands open upon a private library lit by shaded lamps. The scent of warm bread fades gently into the dry, quiet fragrance of wood and closed books. This library is smaller than the mountain gallery below, but deeper and more secluded. Dark shelves rise from floor to ceiling, fitted carefully between bands of pale stone. Every book is closed, and every spine remains plain beneath the shaded lamps. A rolling ladder rests quietly against one wall, while several deep chairs gather around a low table. At the far end, a broad window looks directly towards the colored cliff behind the palace. Moonlight catches the whetstone and reveals thin streams of water descending through muted mineral bands. Beside the window, a narrow door stands partly open upon a room filled not with books, but with stone, glass, and softly reflected color. Low, dark cabinets line the walls beneath shallow glass-fronted alcoves. Within them rest pieces of stone gathered in natural shapes, their colors softened by age and shadow. Dusty rose sits beside pale turquoise, while sage, cream, ochre, and lavender appear in quiet layers. Nothing has been cut into jewels or polished to brilliance. The stones remain rough, gentle, and unmistakably part of the mountain outside. A long table at the center holds larger mineral fragments beside bowls of clear water that deepen their colors. Beyond the cabinets, a narrow, arched opening reveals a private gallery where small fountains emerge directly from the stone wall. Their quiet sound draws you onward. The gallery follows the natural curve of the mountain wall. At intervals, water emerges from narrow openings in the stone and falls into shallow basins below. Each fountain makes a slightly different sound, from a single clear thread to a quiet curtain of droplets. The walking path remains dry, bordered by a low channel that carries the water towards the palace gardens. Pale columns support the inner edge of the gallery, while the outer wall remains rough and naturally colored. Low lamps reveal only the nearest fountain, allowing the others to fade gradually into shadow. Near the far end, an open arch gives way to cold moonlight and the outline of a small private balcony. The balcony projects only a little way beyond the palace, sheltered on three sides by stone. A simple balustrade frames the open view. Below, the spring gardens lie in faint mist, their pools appearing as dark pieces of glass among the trees. Farther out, the palace terraces descend towards the silver river and the sleeping valley. The moon rests above the colored cliffs, turning their brightest mineral bands almost pale. Water passes quietly through the gallery behind you before disappearing into the gardens below. Beside the balcony entrance, a narrow stair climbs between the palace wall and the mountain. Its first steps are lit by cool moonlight rather than lamps. The stair rises in short flights, separated by small landings, open to the night. On one side, the palace wall is smooth and pale. On the other, the mountain remains rough, damp, and marked with quiet mineral color. A narrow water channel follows the outer edge, carrying cool spring water down towards the fountain gallery. With every turn, the palace roofs fall lower beneath you. The air becomes clearer, and the sounds of the lower gardens soften into distance. Ahead, 7 broad slabs of differently colored stone form the final steps to an upper landing. Beyond them, a doorway waits beneath a roof open to the moving night air. The landing is paved in broad pieces of naturally colored stone, each one different but softly harmonious. A low wall protects the open edge, beyond which clouds drift through the valley below. The palace rises another level ahead, quieter and narrower than before. To one side, a covered stair descends back towards the private wing. To the other, tall open doors lead into a chamber where pale curtains move gently in the mountain air. No lamps burn on the landing itself. Moonlight rests across the colored floor and gathers along the threshold ahead. The movement of the curtains makes the room beyond seem to breathe. The room is almost empty. Long, pale curtains hang between tall arches on both sides, lifting and settling with every passing breeze. The floor is smooth stone, interrupted only by a few low cushioned seats and simple wooden tables. Bowls of water rest beneath the windows, their surfaces trembling whenever the air moves through. From one side, the windows overlook the palace and valley. From the other, they face the sheer colored cliff rising close behind the upper rooms. The chamber seems built to receive the night air and allow it to pass freely through the palace. At the far end, a narrow bronze frame door opens towards the observatory above. The ceiling rises into a dark glass dome open to the full depth of the night sky. A large brass viewing instrument stands upon a simple stone base at the center. Its rings, lenses, and polished fittings carry no markings. Smaller instruments rest near the curved windows, all turned towards different portions of the sky. The room is lit mostly by moonlight and the faint glow of the palace far below. Through the glass, the stars appear bright above the black outlines of the mountains. A narrow stair curves upward around the inside of the dome. At its top, an opening leads into a gallery where the moonlight passes through thin mineral glass. Tall panels fill the outer wall, each formed from stone so thin that moonlight passes gently through it. The colors remain soft: pale rose, smoky violet, cool green, cream, and muted gold. They do not cast sharp rainbows across the floor. Instead, each panel releases a quiet wash of color upon the pale stone nearby. The gallery bends around the observatory, offering occasional glimpses of the dome below through inner arches. Outside, the moonlit cliffs appear altered by the colored glass, but never hidden. At the far end, the gallery opens into a low sitting room filled with cloud-soft blue light. The windows begin almost at floor level, making the room feel suspended above the valley. Beyond the glass, pale cloud drifts slowly between the mountain ridges below. Deep cushioned seats are arranged close to the windows, upholstered in muted blue, grey, and cream. A small hearth is built into the inner wall, though only a few embers remain. The colored light from the prism gallery rests faintly across the doorway behind you. No ornaments interrupt the calm surfaces of the room. A broad glass door stands open onto the palace roof garden. Cool air moves through it, carrying the scent of wet stone, leaves, and distant water. the garden is quieter and more open than those below. Low trees and wind-shaped shrubs grow from deep stone beds protected by pale walls. Narrow paths curve between them, paved with dark slate, still damp from the earlier rain. Small pools gather moonlight beside beds of pale grasses and night-blooming flowers. The glass observatory dome rises behind you, reflecting clouds and stars. Ahead, the garden narrows towards a high watercourt built against the mountain. A thin stream flows beside the path, carrying water from the cliff towards the pools. The palace below is no longer visible, except as a few warm windows far beneath the outer wall. The court is narrow and open to the sky. A thin waterfall falls from the dark cliff into a long raised basin of pale stone. From there, the water divides into several channels that disappear beneath the rooftop gardens. Low arches line one side, opening towards cloud and moonlit mountain air. The opposite wall belongs to the living rock, its colors deepened by constant water. A single narrow bridge crosses the basin towards a doorway on the far side. Beyond that doorway, you can hear a low and almost musical movement of air. The sound seems to travel through strings hidden somewhere within the stone. Tall openings face the valley, each fitted with fine bronze strings stretched between dark wooden frames. The night air moves through them and produces low, gentle tones that rise and fade without rhythm. No hands are needed to play them. The gallery itself remains simple, with pale columns, a dark floor, and low benches beside the inner wall. Between the openings, the silver river and palace roofs appear far below. The music is never loud enough to disturb the quiet. It seems less like a melody than the sound of the palace breathing with the mountain. At the far end, a narrow stone passage enters directly into the cliff. The sound of the bronze strings fades quickly behind the stone. The passage is close but not confining, following a natural seam through the colored rock. Small lamps are set low into the floor, revealing muted layers of rose, green, cream, and violet. A narrow stream runs within a smooth channel beside the path. At intervals, small openings look back through the cliff towards the moonlit palace. The air here is cool, still and scented, faintly with wet mineral stone. The passage rises so gradually that the climb is almost unnoticed. Ahead, a pale opening reveals the highest terrace of the palace beneath the open sky. Nothing rises above this place except the final ridge of colored stone. The terrace is broad and almost entirely empty, paved with pale slabs still shining faintly from the rain. A low wall follows the outer edge, overlooking the palace, river, and distant mountain road far below. Clouds move slowly through the valley, leaving the highest peaks clear beneath the stars. At the center of the terrace, a long, shallow pool reflects the moon without disturbance. Beyond it, a small building rests against the final ridge. Its walls are pale. Its roof is dark, and its windows hold only the faintest warm light. A covered path crosses the terrace towards a single closed door. The building grows no grander as you draw near. Its pale walls are smooth and almost completely unadorned. The dark wooden door carries only the natural grain of the timber and the soft sheen of age. On either side, narrow channels carry water from the mountain beneath the sanctuary walls. The sounds of the lower palace no longer reach this height. There is only the movement of water, the wind crossing the terrace, and the faintest warmth resting around the doorframe. Behind you, the reflecting pool holds the moon and the entire sleeping valley beyond. Ahead, the sanctuary waits in perfect silence. The heavy wooden door moves without resistance, revealing a small vestibule shaped from smooth pale stone. Warmth rests quietly in the air, though no fire is visible. The floor is crossed by two narrow water channels, entering from beneath the threshold and continuing into the rooms ahead. Dark wooden panels soften the lower walls, while the ceiling follows the natural curve of the mountain above. Behind you, the open doorway still frames the moonlit terrace and the long reflecting pool. Ahead, a second doorway stands open beneath a low stone arch. Beyond it, a quiet line of lamps leads deeper beneath the ridge. The sanctuary feels less like another part of the palace than a place held apart from it. The hall extends directly beneath the mountain, narrow enough to feel intimate, but never confined. Low lamps rest within simple wall recesses, each flame perfectly still, despite the movement of air behind you. Pale mineral bands pass through the walls in quiet layers of cream, rose, sage, and lavender. The twin water channels continue along either side of the path, carrying a soft and constant sound through the silence. Small benches are set between the lamps, formed from dark wood and smooth pale stone. There are no pictures, ornaments, or signs to explain the sanctuary. Its calm seems to depend upon how little it asks you to notice. At the far end, the ceiling opens beneath a narrow cleft in the ridge where moonlight falls into an inner court. The court lies within a cleft of the mountain, enclosed by living rock on two sides and pale sanctuary walls on the others. Far above, only a slender portion of sky remains visible between the ridges. Moonlight descends through the opening and rests upon a square of dark water at the center. The channels from the hall enter the pool from opposite sides and leave again through small openings beneath the walls. Low alpine plants grow from stone beds around the edges, their leaves silvered with moisture. The air is cooler here and carries the clean scent of rock after rain. No sound reaches the court from the lower palace. There is only water, distant wind, and the faint movement of leaves beneath the open sky. The chamber is formed almost entirely from natural rock, smoothed only where a path has been made. At its center, clear water rises silently through a pale circular basin. There is no fountain and no visible pipe. The spring simply gathers from beneath the stone and overflows into four narrow channels cut into the floor. Moonlight reaches the basin through a small opening above, making the water appear cool and colorless. Around it, the mineral walls carry soft traces of rose, green, cream, and violet. A simple stone cup rests upon the basin edge without inscription or ornament. Beyond the spring, a warm doorway opens into a chamber lined with smooth heated stone. The floor holds a gentle warmth beneath every step. Long stone benches follow the walls, softened with folded cloth and muted cushions. Copper lines disappear into the floor and return through the far wall, carrying heat from the springs below. A shallow recess contains smooth mineral stones warmed by the passing water. The room is dry and quiet after the coolness of the spring chamber. Narrow vents near the ceiling release faint currents of scented air from somewhere deeper within the ridge. The fragrance is delicate, carrying pine, wet earth, and a trace of night-blooming flowers. At the far end, a glass door reveals leaves and pale blossoms beneath a sloping roof. The roof follows the angle of the mountain, its dark glass panes resting between narrow stone ribs. Low alpine shrubs, silver grasses, and small pale flowers grow from deep beds of mineral soil. Nothing here is tropical or overgrown. The plants are shaped by height, cold air, and the patient shelter of the glass. Condensation gathers along the lower panes, while the upper glass remains clear to the stars. A narrow stream passes between the planting beds and disappears beneath a low bridge of pale stone. Beyond the glass, the moonlit ridge rises close enough to fill half the sky. At the far end, a dark wooden door stands open upon a room filled with the softened sound of falling water. The room is long and narrow, with one wall formed from a single sheet of dark glass. Behind it, water descends through a natural shaft in the mountain. The fall is not powerful. It moves in thin silver veils across the rock, creating a low, continuous sound that fills the chamber without echo. Deep cushioned benches face the glass, accompanied by small tables of pale stone. Low lamps beneath the seats reveal only the nearest edges of the room. The moving water catches faint mineral colors before disappearing into darkness below. A doorway at the far end opens into a small tea room where a single lamp rests beside the window. A single low table stands beside a deeply recessed window beneath the ridge. Two cushioned chairs face one another across the dark wood, though the room remains entirely empty. A plain ceramic pot rests upon a warmed stone tray, sending a faint thread of steam into the cool air. Small bowls hold pale biscuits, dried fruit, and mountain herbs. The hidden waterfall remains audible through the wall behind you, softened now by stone and distance. Through the window, the highest terrace and moonlit pool appear between the sanctuary walls. A simple lamp casts only enough light to warm the table and nearby chairs. Beside the window, a narrow doorway leads towards the sanctuary's final private rooms. The window is narrow but tall, set beneath an overhang of colored stone. From here, nearly the entire journey lies below. The sanctuary pool holds the moon in perfect stillness. Beyond it, the palace terraces descend through roof gardens, colonnades, and dark courts towards the Silver River. The river curves through the sleeping valley and disappears between mountain ridges softened by cloud. The rainbow colors are faint beneath the night, visible only where moonlight rests upon wet stone. No movement disturbs the palace. Its lamps seem fewer now, as though room after room has settled into sleep. Behind you, the doorway to the inner passage waits in a small pool of warm light. The passage turns gently away from the terrace and enters the deepest part of the sanctuary. Dark wooden panels line one wall, while the other remains natural mineral stone. A single water channel follows the floor, quieter now and no wider than a silver thread. Small lamps rest low within the wooden wall, guiding the way without revealing the full length of the passage. The ceiling slopes gradually downward beneath the ridge. With every step, the wind and water outside become softer. Ahead, the passage ends at a pair of open wooden doors. Beyond them waits a sleeping chamber lit by moonlight, a small hearth, and the faint glow of the valley below. The room is spacious without feeling grand. A wide bed rests against the smooth inner wall beneath a simple canopy of pale cloth. The covers are layered in muted cream, grey and soft blue, folded neatly beneath the moonlit windows. A shallow hearth glows at one side, giving the room only the faintest warmth. Low tables hold a plain ceramic cup, a bowl of water, and a shaded lamp. Across the room, broad glass doors open onto a narrow private balcony, overlooking the highest terrace. Beyond the glass, the reflecting pool and distant mountains remain bright beneath the moon. Everything here seems prepared not for ceremony, but for rest. The balcony follows the outer wall of the sanctuary beneath the shelter of the ridge. A low stone balustrade separates you from the open night. Below, the long reflecting pool stretches across the terrace, holding the moon and stars without a ripple. The palace falls away beneath it in quiet levels of stone, garden, and water. Far beyond, clouds move slowly through the valley around the lower peaks. The air is cold but gentle. Behind you, the sleeping chamber glows softly through the open doors. For a little while, the whole hidden country seems to breathe beneath the same unbroken silence. The warmth of the room gathers around you without heaviness. The hearth has settled to a small, steady glow, casting faint movement across the pale stone. Moonlight continues to enter through the open balcony doors and rests across the foot of the bed. The ceramic cup on the low table sends up one final thread of steam. Beyond the glass, the terrace remains unchanged and perfectly still. The sanctuary doorways behind you seem very far away now. There is no longer any path that needs to be followed. The room asks only that the journey be allowed to end. The night remains visible, but its sounds soften at once. The movement of distant water becomes a faint hush beyond the glass. Pale curtains settle beside the doors, no longer stirred by the breeze. A trace of condensation begins to gather along the lower panes. The reflecting pool outside still holds the moon, framed now by the dark lines of the doorway. Inside, the hearth gives a quiet pulse of warmth across the floor. The sleeping chamber feels smaller with the doors closed, but also safer and more deeply sheltered. Nothing remains open except the view. The covers have been folded back beneath the pale canopy. The mattress rests low and broad against the inner mountain wall. At the bedside, the shaded lamp has dimmed until it barely colors the stone around it. The bowl of water remains smooth and untouched. From the hearth comes the soft sound of one settling ember. Beyond the closed glass doors, clouds begin to gather around the lower edges of the terrace. The room remains high above them, held beneath the final ridge. Every object has become still, as though the sanctuary itself has prepared to sleep. Fewer lights remain among the terraces now. The library windows have darkened. The spring gardens have faded beneath mist, and the river reflects only scattered pieces of moonlight. Even the waterfalls seem quieter from this height. Cloud drifts around the lower palace walls and softens their outlines. The rainbow mountains remain beyond them, almost colorless beneath the deepest part of night. Inside the chamber, the shaded lamp finally goes dark. Only the hearth, the moon, and the faintest palace lights remain. Its light moves gradually across the closed glass doors. The reflection in the terrace pool shifts closer to the far stone edge. Inside, the pale canopy changes from silver to soft grey. The last ember in the hearth dims beneath a thin cover of ash. Clouds continue to move through the valley, revealing and concealing the river in long, quiet intervals. The colored mountains remain still beneath the stars. Nothing announces the passing of time. The night simply grows deeper, quieter, and more complete. The change is so slight that it could almost be imagined. Black mountain ridges become deep blue. The stars nearest the horizon begin to fade, though those above the sanctuary remain bright. A pale grey light gathers behind the clouds and traces the river through the valley. Inside the room, the stone walls emerge gently from shadow. The canopy hangs perfectly still above the bed. The hearth is dark now, but the chamber no longer needs its warmth. Morning has not yet arrived. It has only begun to find the mountains. At first, only the highest ridges change. Muted rose appears beside pale violet. Then soft bands of sage, cream, ochre, and blue-green return along the wet cliffs. The colors do not brighten suddenly. They rise gently from the stone, softened by cloud and the remaining darkness. The terrace pool now reflects a pale morning sky rather than the moon. Far below, the palace remains quiet beneath a veil of mist. From the bed, the hidden country looks peaceful enough to remain untouched for another 100 years. The long journey has ended beneath the highest ridge. Far below, the road, railway, river, and palace halls remain hidden beneath cloud and morning mist. The chamber holds only pale light, folded curtains, and the quiet shape of the waiting bed. Beyond the glass, the rainbow mountains no longer seem mysterious or distant. They seem gentle now, their colors resting softly beneath the beginning day. Water continues to move through the sanctuary walls in a sound almost too faint to hear. Nothing more is expected of you. The palace will remain where it has always been, beyond the rain, beyond the clouds, and beyond every hurried thought. And here, high above the sleeping valley, you may finally allow yourself to rest.